Scottish police inform the wrong family that their son is dead. A transgender Lincolnshire police staff found with explosives and weapons. Proof that police are not interested in preventative measures but more interested in statistics and fines. And police yet again unable to restrain a child, so resort to tasering them. This and much more coming up. Don't forget, these reports are, where possible, daily, Monday to Friday. Please remember to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And if you appreciate the work I do, please consider joining the channel Patreon for as little as just £3 per month to help me continue providing this content. Hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies and in-betweeners. My name's Dan. Welcome back to another PAP Reports. It is Thursday, the 8th of October, 2020. Just to let you know, the majority of today's reports would be more suitable for PAP Reports bad bits. So rather than break this into two videos where the bad bits would be longer than the main report, I've simply added them all to this report. If you believe that police are impartial, considerate, compassionate and understanding, then think again. We see daily how in most cases this is not the standard of policing. Police have also foolishly been allowed to police using discretion, meaning that in many cases the police will act on their emotions at the time rather than any actual crime, and since they have been given such broad powers, they can use a host of feelings to book you for something ridiculous. 47-year-old David Brennan from Dunbartonshire found this out for himself. David was cycling to work in Glasgow in October 2019 when he was assaulted by a driver in a road rage incident, who then punched him in the face. David said that he thought he was in danger as a vehicle came close to him, so he slapped the bonnet of the car with his palm. He said, "The driver got out and was incredibly aggressive, hurling abuse at me. He pushed me and then punched me in the face. I was left with a swollen lip and in a state of shock." During the incident, in retaliation to the assault, David swore at the driver, all of which was caught on camera. After being presented with video footage of the incident, Police Scotland issued the driver with a written warning for assault, but then accused and charged David of breaching the peace because of the way he had reacted during the incident by swearing. Now, for your information, Scottish law on breach of the peace is like here in England. It's very broad, meaning that it can encompass anything from relatively minor allegations of shouting or swearing to sending abusive text messages, or even more serious allegations of sustained violent behaviour and brandishing weapons. However, it's a defence for a person charged with an offence of behaving in a threatening or abusive manner to show that the behaviour was, in the particular circumstances, reasonable. I would suggest that anyone watching this might find being assaulted is a reasonable excuse to tell someone to fuck off and raise your voice. But with the maximum penalty for an offence under section 38(1 prosecuted in the Sheriff's Court at summary level is 12 months imprisonment or a fine of up to £5,000 or both, and statutory or common law breach of the peace charges brought in a justice of the peace courts, where the maximum penalties are 60 days imprisonment or a fine of up to £2,500, you would think the police would consider the levels of behaviour under the circumstances rather than simply saying someone breached the peace. Being an avid cyclist, David sought help from some cycle charities, and after Cycling UK and Cycle Law Scotland intervened, police dropped the charges, proving a point that they are happy to continue with a BS charge so long as it's not challenged. But once it's challenged and the public are made aware of the incident, they're more likely to rethink any spurious charges. Cycling UK says the police have serious questions to answer about the case and have now demanded a review of procedures, and are also calling for meetings with the Scottish Justice Minister, senior Police Scotland officers and senior officers from Transport Scotland to discuss how vulnerable road users can be better protected. David said, "I thought I was in danger and reacted to a fast approaching vehicle by slapping the bonnet with the palm of my hand. The driver got out and was incredibly aggressive, hurling abuse at me. He pushed me and then punched me in the face. I was left with a swollen lip and in a state of shock." After police saw his action cam footage, they decided that a written warning was appropriate for an assault. David added, "I felt angry and let down. I had been driven at, abused, pushed and punched in the face, and the driver was only given a warning. That's not justice." He said that a few weeks later, police turned up at his home to issue him with an official warning for breaching the peace. He said, "I was honestly shaken to the core, under pressure, late at night, and with no advice at hand. I felt that I had to accept the warning." The officers didn't care that any swearing and shouting was a reaction to being endangered and assaulted. The warning belittled the effect that this incident had on me and has left me feeling self-doubt and anger ever since. Jim Denshaw, Cycling UK's policy and campaigns manager in Scotland, said David's experience on the road that morning must have been frightening and the shock compounded by his subsequent treatment. Too often we hear of people who are out enjoying a cycle ride but experience a dangerous situation through no fault of their own. Dangerous incidents reported to the police on the road must be dealt with fairly, and they must recognise that people who cycle are vulnerable road users. We believe that helmet cams and dash cam technology can help the police do their job, and that's why we are calling for Police Scotland to introduce a straightforward system which enables anyone to submit this footage. Now, whatever you think of cyclists, I mean, they might be a pain in the arse, but assaulting people for any reason other than to protect life or protect from injury must be dealt with properly, and police have to start using their brains if they're to use discretion. The fact that they dropped the case when a charity intervened is a proven point that police do and will make up spurious BS charges against people in the simple hope they just accept it, so the police can then add another point to their statistics. Police Scotland again now, this time issuing an apology after telling the wrong family their son had died in a traffic accident. The incident, which happened in Aberdeenshire on October the 5th, saw one man pronounced dead and another taken to hospital in a critical condition. However, police informed the wrong family about the death, as in they told the family of a boy who wasn't even in the vehicle. Chief Inspector Neil Lumsden, who seems to be a bit of a Nazi fan after apparently writing 14 books on the subject, and also back in 2001 was approached about his use of his Nazi number plate, which read N5DAP, the initials of Hitler's political party, said that officers were faced with a confused scene, including incorrect information provided by a witness. Officers at the scene of the crash use every avenue available to help identify those involved as quickly and accurately as possible. He said this included using personal effects found at the scene, using police systems to find out who the registered keeper of a vehicle is, looking at who is insured to drive it, and checking for any other information through the agencies such as the DVLA. Finally, crash investigators will also use the information gathered from those involved who are able to identify themselves and others, said Chief Inspector Lumsden. On this occasion, officers were faced with a confused scene, including incorrect information provided by a witness. Once identified, the error was promptly corrected, and the family of those involved were spoken to and were understanding of the circumstances. We have apologised to the families for any unintended upset and will review to identify any learning. And there's that learning again. I think the question remains, will they ever learn? West Mercia Police have referred footage shared on social media to their professional standards department after a constable was filmed hitting a teenage boy over the head. On Monday the 5th of October at around 10 p.m, 2 teenagers were arrested in Horsefair, Kidderminster over allegations they had assaulted a police constable. A passerby filmed the incident, which was later shared on social media, of a 16-year-old being restrained by one constable when another arrives on blues and twos, runs over, holds the boy for a few seconds before bashing him on the head several times, leaving the boy with head injuries, so claim his family. The boy's sister said that she and her brother had ran towards their home in Horsefair after police approached their car they were in, being driven by her boyfriend in the same road. She alleged they had previously been repeatedly stopped and searched and wanted to get home. The 17-year-old said she and her brother were then taken to Kidderminster Police Station and were detained for 5 hours, but then released at 3:30 a.m. on Tuesday the 6th of October, pending an investigation into the incident. Their dad said he waited outside the police station for 3 hours to see his children and was concerned for his son, whose head was bleeding. He said, "I understand the police have got a job to do. I think Monday night was out of order. They have gone way over the top. It made me angry." North Worcestershire Chief Inspector Edward Hancock said, "I have been made aware of an extract of a video shared on social media today. The video appears to show an incident in Horsefair, Kidderminster on Monday night around 10 p.m. The part of the incident caught on video by a member of the public shows West Mercia officers detaining an individual who was arrested on suspicion of assaulting a police officer. Another individual connected to this incident was also arrested on suspicion of assaulting an officer. A male and a female in their teens, and both from Kidderminster, were arrested for assaulting an emergency worker and were taken into custody at Kidderminster Police Station. They have both since been released under investigation. An internal investigation has been launched, and we have forwarded the details and video of the incident together with any captured police officers' body-worn video to our Professional Standards Department for review.
This scumbag here, this scumbag hitting little kids. Come on, get me. I'll bounce a cone off you. Get me, you little scumbag. I'm not bullying little kids, mate, you little scumbag. That's what you are. Bully. Hey, nursery in here, boys. Hey. He's a little kid. Look how you're doing to a little kid. What you doing? What you doing?
Do not resist. Stay where the fuck you are.
Go on, give it them, lad. I'll have it. What you doing? You scumbag, I've got you on camera. You scumbag. Give it them, let them all have it, scumbag.
34-year-old transgender Zoe Watts, formerly known as Kyle Ashley Jake Watts, a member of staff at Lincolnshire Police, has been charged after weapons and chemical explosives were found at a house. Watts was arrested on Sunday and has been charged with 1 count of importing prohibited weapons with intent to evade a prohibition or restriction, and 1 count of making an explosive substance for an unlawful purpose, before appearing at Lincoln Magistrates Court, where she was remanded. Police have said that searches at the property in Lincoln have been ongoing since Sunday, and a number of weapons have been recovered, along with chemicals of a potentially explosive nature. Assistant Chief Constable Kerrin Wilson said, "We know that this is an unusual and worrying incident which will concern our communities. We within Lincolnshire Police share these feelings, and although this relates to someone who works for the force, we will investigate this meticulously without fear or favour. Since the initial incident on Sunday, our number one priority has been the safety of the public, and I'd like to thank local residents for their understanding while our searches at the property continue. It really is appreciated. Please be mindful that as a person has now been charged with offences, this is an active investigation, which means that engaging in rumour and speculation, especially on any public platforms such as social media, can have a detrimental effect on any potential court proceedings." Now, since Watts was arrested, it's been discovered that she owns a YouTube channel, which in fairness should have flagged her psychological state. And I'm going to show you a heavily edited video, which is simply due to time constraints, but to show you I'm not hiding anything, the full video will be linked to in the description, so you can watch that all if you want to.
So as a trigger warning for this video, it does include examples of homophobic and transphobic language.
Hey everyone, Zoe here. So my name's Zoe. I'm transgendered and I'm bisexual. And as you can see from the nature of those comments, a lot of them are aimed at me, at my personal appearance, at my gender identity or my sexuality or being a member of the LGBT community. I don't do videos that announce to the world, hey look, I'm LGBT, look at this coming out video. So my name's Zoe, I'm transgendered and I'm bisexual. So February is LGBT History Month. If you didn't know, LGBT usually stands for lesbian, gay, bi and trans. But for survival mistakes purposes, LGBT stands for something quite different. The lacerating glass bigot twatter. So my baseball bat is inspired by one in Creek Stewart's article, 6 zombie destroying baseball bats. I've already made the flail from that video in the past. Creek calls it the shard or the shredder. It's a baseball bat that's rolled in liquid adhesive, which is then rolled in broken glass.
And of course, on the one day I actually go to do filming to show you guys the potential of the LGBT, it's like the windiest day in the world. And behold, the LGBT, the lacerating glass bigot twatter. So I'm going to be adding some random cardboard party masks onto these to simulate the heads of some bigots I'm going to beat up with the LGBT. 3, 2, 1.
So adding some glass to the baseball bat definitely increased its weight and gave it a laceration factor on those bigoted watermelons.
On Tuesday, we spoke about PC Christopher Rhodes, a South Yorkshire Police Constable who was accused of punching a detained person in the face while sitting in the back of a police car. In that report, we didn't have much information, but his misconduct hearing started yesterday, and it's been said that he told the panel that he would do the same again. The detained person has turned out to have been a woman who was handcuffed, and it was said he repeatedly punched her in the face, leaving a sheet of blood on her face. The incident itself occurred 2 years ago, but has only just got round to being heard by a misconduct panel. It said there is no dispute that Rhodes punched the woman 3 or 4 times to the face, as she allegedly lay across the back of the vehicle in handcuffs, apparently fighting against him. Rhodes is said to be 6 foot 3 inches tall, but felt that punching a woman in the face was appropriate after he arrested her for being drunk and disorderly. But the case made on behalf of South Yorkshire Police is that his actions were disproportionate to the threat the woman posed. When asked if he would act differently in the same circumstances, he said, "I don't think I would change what I did. I had to gain control of her one way or another. The injuries she received were regrettable, but I would not have done anything different." The hearing was told PC Rhodes and a colleague were called to Ash View, Greesborough, twice on the same May evening of 2018, being asked to return shortly after initially speaking to a woman. She was found a short distance away in Greenside and was eventually arrested for being drunk and disorderly after shouting abuse at the officers, who had intended to offer words of advice. After being handcuffed, she was put in the back of a police car, but laid across the rear seat and apparently kicked out, hitting a female police constable in the eye. PC Rhodes then entered the car, crouching over the prisoner, who allegedly kicked him and hit him with her handcuffed fist before trying to bite his fingers. So he punched her in the face. So-called distraction blows, but they failed to calm her and he struck her at least once more, leaving her with a cut face and a broken nose. When his female colleague saw the extent of the bleeding course, she said she was shocked, and another police constable described the woman's face as a sheet of blood. Rhodes's final punch was said to have resulted in a woman's resistance ending, but she was bleeding so much she was spitting blood as she shouted at police, and because she has hepatitis, several of them needed medical health checks. After being removed from the car, the woman was placed in a police van, but another police constable said in a statement that she slid off the seat and appeared to be having a fit before losing consciousness. An ambulance took her to Rotherham Hospital while police officers involved in the incident attended Sheffield's Northern General. It's been suggested to the panel, which will make a ruling, that the imminent threat to PC Rhodes' female colleague had passed and he was not under threat until he entered the car, and that she was not in a position to present a serious threat to him. A ruling was expected yesterday. I've not heard it yet, but I will let you know as soon as I can. Speeding. We all know it's an issue, and police constantly say that they are all about prevention rather than having to fine people. Okay then. But seriously, if you ask any copper about speed enforcement, they'll tell you the same thing. Prevention, prevention, prevention. But police in Swadlincote, Derbyshire, have proven that that's not the case. Police spoke of how they were greeted by drivers with smiles and waves, all travelling at the correct speed limit, which made them suspicious. Soon after, an unmarked police vehicle travelling towards a speed trap discovered the reason, and that was that other drivers were flashing to warn of the speed trap ahead. Which has to be a good thing, surely, considering it's all about prevention. Right? Wrong. Because instead of thinking, great, people travelling through here are driving safely, no matter the reason for them driving safely, they're now said to be going to send fines in the post to drivers who use their headlights to warn other motorists of the police speed trap. I suppose those preventative measures have to be paid for somehow, don't they? Swaddling Coat Police Safer Neighbourhood team announced on social media that the drivers caught warning others were told to expect a fine in the post, as what they had done was obstruct a police operation, which again proves the police were there for revenue generating rather than prevention. Some accused the police of getting desperate on the social media post by finding the drivers being helpful, and some pointed out that the point of the checks was to get people to slow down, which was what they were doing. One social media user even suggested that having an unmarked car spotting those slowing traffic could be a form of entrapment. But the Derbyshire police officers have defended the move, saying the aim of the speed check was to find out where the problem areas are in and around the town for safety reasons, and those who warned others were obstructing the work of the police. It also means the figures they get for the numbers of speeders were not a true reflection of the problem on the road, they say. A spokesman added that those who had been caught speeding during the operation would receive advice rather than be prosecuted and fined, but that tickets would be issued in future to speeders if the percentage of drivers going faster than they should did not drop. Yeah, okay then. And if you expect people to believe that, then you are more stupid than you think we are. A police spokesman said, as a team, we knew that the idea of prosecuting people for warning other drivers would be a controversial topic. And while many of you have decided to try and write defences for these, the facts are that these drivers have used their lights to convey a message to others about our speed checks, therefore obstructing the work that we are trying to do. One of our highlighted priorities for all our areas in the most recent survey was speeding. So as a team, we have completed numerous speed checks on roads throughout the area so that we can pinpoint our problem roads. If drivers are warned of our speed checks, and when we are correlating the results, it does not give a true reflection of the number of drivers speeding, and therefore does not allow us to be able to put the required measures in place to ensure safety on our road. But isn't it for the councils to provide safety measures? Surely the police can only enforce contraventions or catch people speeding. Now, I might be wrong with that, as it's not something I've dealt with before, but I'm pretty sure that the councils are the ones who put safety measures in place, such as road humps, allowing static speed cameras, etc. While we will educate our light flashers and wavers, we hope that everyone understands that this is something we could prosecute for in the future should it hinder the work we are trying to do. Please heed the warning. Just to add, we do not receive any money from speeding fines, particularly as we can only have 6 at the Christmas party this year. Only 6 at the Christmas party this year. Is that a bit of a slip up? Do they know something we don't? I mean, we're still 11 weeks from Christmas, yeah? So how do they know the regulations won't change by then? Interesting. Avon and Somerset Police and a judge have successfully managed to remove someone's freedom of speech by imposing an order on him to prevent him from using a certain word and prevent him from using the device to amplify his voice. 56-year-old Michael Overt, a street preacher, was given an injunction, basically an ASBO, after he preached his beliefs outside of an abortion clinic, which now prevents him from using the word murder or using something to amplify his voice, such as a megaphone or microphone. The Taunton neighbourhood policing team sought the restrictions after receiving, apparently, a large number of complaints about Mr. Overt's words and actions, and that they were causing harassment, alarm and distress to members of the public and disruption to businesses. Now, I wonder how many animal rights protesters preaching about their beliefs when calling people murderers get issued with injunctions. The antisocial behaviour order originally was said to have outlined 6 restrictions on Mr. Overt. However, since the interim order was put in place while they waited for a court date, which only gave 2 restrictions on his use of the word murder or an amplifier, they say that complaints about him have dropped, and so decided that restricting his right to protest and his right to freedom of speech was enough, therefore not imposing the other 4 restrictions they had planned. However, the council's antisocial behavioural coordinator said that should we feel additional conditions are required in the future, then the option remains for us to return to court to seek their implementation. Somerset Commander Superintendent Mike Price said, "We have an aspiration to be the most inclusive police force in England and Wales, and always respect an individual's rights to freedom of speech, expression, thought, belief and religion, and of peaceful protest. However, these must be balanced with the general public being able to go about their lawful daily business without feeling alarmed and distressed. It seems the police forget that people's feelings are their own choice. They're subjective. Providing someone's not actually harassing someone, getting in their face and calling them a murderer, then unfortunately we must be allowed to speak our minds and to protest. It's like saying you want to protest against government, but you're not allowed to use the words government, Boris Johnson or Parliament. It removes your right to freedom of expression and free speech. The police say it's about the number of complaints they have received, but unlike criminal complaints, which they love to say isn't in the public interest, they put all of this time and effort into removing someone's rights rather than telling complainants that he has the right to do what he's doing. Metropolitan Police Constable PC Gemma Street, based at the Metropolitan Police Central Communications Command Centre in Lambeth, has denied breaching the standards of professional behaviour in relation to equality and diversity and discreditable conduct at her misconduct hearing. PC Street, whilst off duty, attended We Are Bar in Bishopsgate in central London in January 2019, where she got pissed, started being discriminatory towards staff and throwing a plastic table topper which hit another customer. Street allegedly showed her warrant card to a Colombian bar worker, called her a drug dealer and told a security guard to go back to Poland and learn English. She was approached by staff after she tossed a plastic table topper behind her which hit another customer. The situation was said to have been resolved, but Street began intimidating staff when they realised she was drunk and refused to serve her more alcohol. The misconduct hearing was told PC Street beckoned the bar worker, referred to as Ms A, over to her table and asked if there was a problem, before showing her police warrant card underneath the table. Ms A said she took it out after I said she was not getting served. She then reached over and held the badge out and said, "Do we have a problem now?" Looking at me straight in the eye, she got really abusive towards security. Kevin Baumber, counsel for PC Street, suggested the officer showed her badge to reassure Ms A that there would be no trouble because she was a police officer. Yeah, I'm sure that's exactly why she did it. But Ms A said she accused me of drugging her the whole night and of being a drug dealer. She said she was going to return in 3 days to see me. She said we had better get her a drink. She was saying it aggressively. I asked, "Are you on duty?" And she said, "I am always on duty." And that is when I said, "That is another reason not to serve you." She tried to take a picture of the waitress and myself. She was shouting at the waitress. She was very close to my personal space. It was worrying. It was very offensive to myself and my culture. In evidence played at the court, PC Street can be heard saying everyone is going to lose their jobs. She is English, the rest are all Polish. Ms A also claimed the officer made racist comments towards security staff before she called police to defuse the situation. Julian Walters, counsel for the Metropolitan Police Service, described PC Street's behaviour as racist and discriminatory and amounting to gross misconduct. PC Street denies breaching the standards of professional behaviour in relation to equality and diversity and discreditable conduct. Kevin Baumber, PC Street's brief, suggested the only comment about drugs was made to the doorman who told the officer that drugs would be planted on her, at which point Street knew she had to offer the doorman a job with the police. I'm joking. PC Street denies 2 counts of gross misconduct relating to disorderly behaviour and racist remarks. The hearing continues. We spoke on Tuesday about a man who was detained by police in yet another misidentification of a suspect where the man was handcuffed and pepper sprayed. More information about the situation has emerged, and it appears that a so-called fashion blogger was walking with her boyfriend when police rushed up in their car, jumped out and grabbed him, assuming him to be the driver of a stolen car. Now, what pisses me off about this recording, which I'll show you in a moment, as with so many, is that it's been edited again and completely skips the part where the police speak to the man up until he is on the floor being restrained. The woman whose boyfriend was detained said police wrongfully arrested her and her boyfriend, who is black, despite looking for a suspect who later turned out to be white. She said they were standing with a crowd when they saw police chasing a stolen car. The video she uploaded to Instagram, after editing, had the caption, "Today, me and my boyfriend had just stepped out of the house to go to the shop. We saw a black car speeding down the high road with police and vans chasing the vehicle. It could have killed people. It was swerving busy traffic. I even had to run across the road as they nearly drove over me and my boyfriend on the pavement. All of a sudden, 2 police cars had unexpectedly pulled up and they hopped out and grabbed me and my boyfriend and spraying us with pepper spray and arrested us without telling us why. Later on, they told us we were arrested on suspicion of a stolen vehicle even though he was among the crowd watching the craziness. They said we matched the description of a brunette woman and a white man, which we clearly are not. We were just standing on the sidewalk. We were mistaken identities. We are so ashamed and upset that we had to go through this. Haha, sidewalk. Another millennial who's been watching far too many American YouTube channels. Also, to mention, we did not resist arrest, she said, even though we were innocent. We were just so confused and shouting, we have done nothing wrong. How could we have stolen the vehicle if it was still being chased actively by police, with the criminals inside, and we were just standing near a flower shop? They later de-arrested us and just left saying they got the wrong people.
I can't believe I had to go through something like this with my boyfriend. It was so horrible. My poor boyfriend was so stressed out. I was trying to calm him down and the police was not having it. It was horrible. Please share this. The following footage is what I recorded from it. Oh my God. We just come on my hill. You're going to be mad. He's like there in the black car. It's the right man. It's the right man. Hang on. I'm gonna see shit. Oh my God. Get off his head. Oh my God. My car, let me get this. Okay. Can I talk to him? I'm even just... My car, let me get this. Okay. Can I talk to him? I'm even just... In a minute.
Right now. Mum's less or? Oh, is there like 3 man on 1, fam? That's he's my nuts, boy.
How does that even make sense?
How many jakes they got? Some dickheads, man.
Essex Police said in a statement at about 1:40 p.m. on Saturday afternoon, a man was detained by police officers in Loughton because his clothing matched the description of that worn by a driver of a suspected cloned car who moments earlier had run off from the vehicle, having failed to stop for police. Based on this description of his clothing, officers asked to speak to the man. He pulled away from officers despite being asked to stand still and remain calm. The officers suspected he was seeking to escape, so he was physically restrained. It was quickly established the man was in fact not connected to the suspected cloned vehicle, and he was allowed to go on his way shortly afterwards. At the same time, and in the immediate vicinity, another set of officers detained a second man whose clothing matched the same description. He was arrested, interviewed and released under investigation. The circumstances surrounding the detention of the first man, including the use of handcuffs and incapacitance spray, are now subject of an ongoing investigation. Essex Police has made a voluntary referral to the Independent Office of Police Conduct in relation to this. Assistant Chief Constable Andy Profit said, we were searching for someone who had ran from a suspicious car after failing to stop for police. At that stage, the officers had a description of his clothing, but not of the man himself. Now, I'm not being funny here, and I'll probably get some stick from some viewers, but surely, when dealing with a crime, a full description would be imperative. Now, and in most cases, I don't care about colour of someone's skin, but when you're searching for someone, you eliminate a huge amount of people just by saying whether the suspect is white or black, or Asian, for example, which would likely be one of the most noticeable things. Well, more so than trying to remember what trainers they were wearing or if they had a coat or jumper on. But people are simply not helping themselves by editing videos in a way that makes them look suspicious. One thing I do have to agree with the police on is that people do edit their videos, and this doesn't help anyone. Granted, sometimes you only get your phone rolling after some of the incident has already unfolded. But to have your phone in your hand, start recording and then cut out crucial elements of the recording simply doesn't help your case, especially if, as it would appear to be in this case, you're going to be accusing people of being racist. Normally, I say we can only make an assumption based on what we see happening at the time, and that is true. Police are supposed to react to the level of threat at the time. So if someone was being a dick 10 minutes ago, doesn't mean they're still being one now, you know, and that they deserve a punch in the head. But when you have a recording that clearly starts before the guy was restrained and has to make you wonder why there was a chunk missing. Not for a moment am I suggesting the police did the right thing, but due to the missing part, we can't see how the guy was before the recording started again when he was on the floor. And that's just me being completely honest. A family who say they have been harassed by North Wales Police for years had an organised event shut down over fears it breached COVID regulations. The Extreme 4x4 event in the Ross area of Wrexham was organised to go ahead on Sunday the 4th of October, even after completing the local authority risk assessments and introduced additional measures to keep the event COVID secure. But North Wales Police was said to have turned out in force at the monthly event after deciding that it flouted strict lockdown rules. So they just decided. Police said one motorist at the event was arrested for drug driving and another man was being dealt with for drug-related matters, and said the landowner had been reported for COVID-19 offences. The event organisers later put out a statement about the drug-related incident, stating that the offender was picked up by police half an hour before the event started and wasn't even on the land the event was being staged on at the time. Following the event, Inspector Mike Norbury said the event was a clear breach of the COVID-19 regulations. People who attended must have been aware of what they can and cannot do. He said, "We are determined to protect the local community, and although our approach is always to engage and explain to people what they should be doing, we will take robust enforcement action when necessary." Councillor Hugh Jones, lead member for People, Communities, Partnerships, Public Protection and Community Safety at Wrexham Council, said, "I would like to thank North Wales Police for acting quickly and effectively here. It is clear that gatherings such as this will not be tolerated and appropriate action will be taken. The rules are very clear, and it is all of our responsibility to make sure that we are aware of them and, more importantly, stick to them." But the event organisers have hit back at police, saying that they followed the guidelines. In a statement, they said, "Our absolute top priority has always been the safety and well-being of our attendees and, of course, the local community during this international pandemic. We put countless hours of research into how best to prevent the spread of COVID-19, completed all of the relevant risk assessments and introduced all of the necessary control measures to abate the spread of the virus. Attendees had their temperature taken, contact-free, were instructed to remain in their respective social bubbles and not to exit their vehicles unless absolutely necessary. In line with Welsh national guidelines, no groups of more than 30 were admitted. The social distancing measures everyone is all too familiar with were advertised weeks before our event, and each vehicle upon arrival was issued with a document detailing all measures we had taken to eliminate the spread of COVID-19. Our outdoor events are COVID secure, like many others which continue to operate throughout this time, and we spent hours researching legislation and local lockdown rules to ensure that we complied with all of them. The police have taken issue with members of the public attending our event from outside of Wrexham County Borough, and although we had a small number of safety marshals travelling into Wrexham to work, we had received information from the police via other local event companies that travelled to and from COVID secure events such as ours was an acceptable excuse to enter the county. Everyone doing so was instructed not to stop off anywhere inside of Wrexham County Borough other than to our event, so as to further eliminate chances for the virus to spread. There are a number of other local vehicular-based outdoor COVID secure events which continue to operate throughout this time with similar measures in place, and the police have been happy to allow them. The statement went on to claim that the family who organised the event had been harassed by police for many years. They added, "Despite them releasing that we have been reported for unspecified offences, no charges have been issued to us, nor has any legal paperwork as a result of our event on the 4th of October. We would like to make it clear that one person arrested for driving under the influence of a controlled substance and the one person summoned to court for possession of a controlled substance are in no way affiliated with the team at the 4x4 event. The arrest took place off-site on the public highway at around 9:30 before our event began at 10, and we absolutely do not condone or encourage the use of illegal substances or driving under the influence of illegal substances." Now, we've already seen the police here in England doing similar to events that have already been signed off. There should be no reason for the police to be confused about which events have had approval after completing local authority risk assessments. But it appears that police will simply storm in without a care in the world because they can get away with it. These bully boy tactics, these acting outside of the law, disregarding rules and regulations when it suits them and enforcing advice when it suits them, Getting the entire idea of policing arse about face is never going to help with getting the public back on side. And they really need to think about how to move forward so that we can all get back to respecting one another again. Because it simply seems to me that the police have no intentions of wanting to have the respect from the communities they serve. I suppose that's because it means they won't be able to abuse people quite as much as dealing with someone who tells them to fuck off. Now, we mentioned just a few days ago about how ICSA, the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, had found massive failures in the Church of England regarding protecting children from abuse from paedophiles hiding behind the collar and cloth. And just a couple of days later, we find ourselves talking about this 73-year-old cretinous cunt, Robert Glover, a former church minister, although not quite sure what church he was with, who's been convicted after a 2-week trial at Worcester Crown Court for a string of sex offences. Glover, from Great Western Way in Stourport-on-Severn, was found guilty of raping a child under 13, assault by penetration of a child under 13, 2 counts of indecent assault on a child under 16, and inciting a child to engage in sexual activity at his trial at Worcester Crown Court. Now, to be fair, I've heard of people doing far more to children, or to far more children, but getting far less sentences, so it's great that this vile fuck has been sentenced to what I would call a proportionate sentence for his crimes. Glover was handed a 16-year sentence, which will possibly see him die in jail. Fingers crossed. And was ordered to sign the sex offenders register for the remainder of his worthless life. I'm not sure who the judge was in this case, but I am pleased that the judge didn't come out with some excuse to let him off lightly, like his age, because when crimes such as these are committed, they should never have any mitigating circumstances to give lenient sentences. Now, I've said before how police are all too often... Now, I've said before how police are all too often too quick to use their weapons because they are so unskilled in dealing with people, de-escalating situations, or even fit enough to handle a suspect and restrain them using self-defence or the techniques that they're supposed to be taught during their police training. And this has led to a rise in the amount of people being assaulted by police who are trigger happy. Today is no exception as we bring you 2 Greater Manchester Police Constables, so unskilled, so pathetically weak that they had to resort to tasering a 15-year-old over an alleged public order offence. The incident unfolded on Cobden Street in Salford at around 11:15 a.m. on Tuesday the 6th of October. There's been no indication or mention that any weapons were involved in the offence, but the official Greater Manchester Police statement obviously has been designed to cover for the police constables who deployed 50,000 volts into a fucking child because 2 of them couldn't manage to restrain him. Now, I'll show you the video in just a moment, but first let's just hear the excuse made by Greater Manchester Police. At 11:10 a.m. on Tuesday, October 6th, police on a routine patrol of the Salford area observed a public order offence. Whilst responding, 2 officers were assaulted and a piece of police equipment was snatched from one of them. To maintain the safety of all involved, an officer deployed their taser. A 15-year-old boy was subsequently detained and, in line with normal procedure, taken to hospital as a precaution. Now, although the only copy of this video I can find has the young lad blurred out, let's think about what the police say in their statement about a piece of equipment being taken from one of the constables. First of all, I'm sure that if this was in the army and someone allowed another person to take their weapon from them, they would be in a whole heap of shit. But secondly, and what's most important to me, is that during the video there is no indication, no mention, no action that would have suggested the lad took anything from the coppers. Now, of course, I could be wrong as the image is blurred, but why did neither of the police make mention of the fact that he had taken something from them? There was no, look out, he's got your whatever it was supposed to be, or there's no give it back or drop it. There's no indication that the lad had dropped an alleged item as he was dragged along the floor before being told to put his hands behind his back, indicating that if he did have something, it would have been dropped, but there's nothing on the floor. In my opinion, the allegation he had taken something, and again I could be wrong, but based solely on the footage, what's seen and heard, I cannot imagine at any point that he did manage to take a piece of equipment from the police. And if he did, why did they not say what it was that he was supposed to have taken? Anyway, here's the video, but before that, the IOPC have said that they were not made aware of the incident, meaning that the police had not referred the matter to them, which I would expect them to have done if a member of the public managed to take something from the police that was a threat enough for them to taser him.
Hey,
Oh, gee, just tased a 15-year-old.
Alright, what's this side? I want to get up. Put your knees on your pump. No, you're not getting up. Put your knees to your chest.
Thank you, mate. You just tased a 15.
Now, before I move on, I just want to point out, after I finished recording this entire video, I realised something. At the end of this, and I know people are going to pick up on this. In a minute, you see this police female ask somebody to pick up a baton off the floor. And immediately you're going to think, well, the lad must have had that baton. That must have been the piece of equipment that this 15-year-old took off of the police. However, it was the policewoman that dropped that on the floor. Although it looks as though that must have been the weapon, she's the one that drops that on the floor. I'll show you. Police constables who caused the death of someone in custody could be given the same anonymity as firearms officers, leading to it being harder to hold police accountable in a ramped up new policy. The new death or serious injury authorised professional practice policy was announced on the Police Federation website in July, and the new guidance gives police involved in custody deaths the same level of anonymity as firearms police following a fatal shooting. A statement on the Police Federation website said officers involved in deaths or serious injuries will be given protection in College of Policing policy, akin to colleagues who carry firearms. The policy sets out clear steps that should be taken by forces to protect officers legally, ensuring their welfare is looked after, as well as assist with the investigation that follows. However, families of people who have died in police custody have expressed serious concern about the new policy. Campaign groups believe it is misguided for forces in England and Wales to take extra steps to protect anonymity at a time of global calls for greater transparency following the killing of George Floyd in the United States. Leading campaigner Tipper Naphtali, whose cousin Mikey Powell died whilst in the custody of West Midlands Police in 2003, said it's really disrespectful that they should even be thinking of a policy of this type, which is basically to afford police even more protection than they currently have, which makes them almost untouchable. Naphtali, who runs the Forward Ever UK and Friends of Mikey Powell campaign, said the system is already heavily weighted against bereaved families. His cousin Powell died aged 38 of asphyxiation shortly after being arrested by police in Birmingham while suffering a psychotic episode, his death that parallels to that of George Floyd, the family say. 10 constables were charged with criminal offences after Powell's death, but all were cleared of wrongdoing in 2006. Naphtali pointed to the fact that there had been no conviction of a police officer related to a death in custody for more than 5 decades in this country. The first recorded death in custody was David Oluwale in 1969. That's the last time ever in 1969 that a police officer was actually imprisoned in the UK for a death in custody. That's disgraceful. In 2017, a report on deaths in police custody by Dave Elish Angioloni QC made 110 recommendations to minimise the risks of future deaths. Commenting on the new policy, Dame Elish told the Huffington Post she had no difficulty with officers having access to legal advice, and anonymity was not unusual in the UK in the early stages of an investigation. But she expressed concern about the persistence of the practice of bringing police together following an operation, a practice that has been criticised because of the risk of testimony becoming tainted or collusion occurring. That practice in England is wholly contrary to the guidance issued by the Independent Office for Police Conduct and is often not in the longer term interests of all the officers involved. So we already see the police becoming more heavy-handed, more trigger-happy as time goes by, and now it seems that they could literally kill without consequence. Former Staffordshire Police Constable 28-year-old Philip Taylor, who was based at Cannock Police Station, is due to appear in court today at the North Staffordshire Justice Centre, accused of 6 sexual assaults causing sexual activity without consent, possessing of extreme pornographic images, not involving children, and publishing an obscene article, also not involving children. A Staffordshire police spokesman said Philip Taylor, 28, who was a police constable based at Cannock Police Station, is due to appear before magistrates at the North Staffordshire Justice Centre on Thursday, the 8th of October. He is charged with 6 sexual assaults, causing sexual activity without consent, possession of extreme pornographic images, and publishing an obscene article. Taylor was arrested on 29th of May 2019 by an officer from the Force's Professional Standards Department. At the time of his arrest, he was a probationary constable and he was dismissed from the Force in February 2020. As soon as I have an update on this, I will of course let you know. Now, we've spoken about Hertfordshire Police Constable PC Nicholas Mustoe several times here on the channel on the 3rd of July, 6th of August and 22nd of September over his misconduct in public office, where he was caught out knocking boots with a victim of crime who suffered mental health problems whilst on duty. He was subsequently charged, found guilty and sentenced at Peterborough Crown Court in July, but remained a Hertfordshire Police Constable with calls of outrage from the public as to why he hadn't yet been dismissed. Well, it turns out that Mustoe thought he was untouchable. See what I did there? As it transpires that Mustoe was in fact a constable responsible for leaving a man permanently disabled after a vicious attack on an man who later received damages from Hertfordshire Police in the region of £100,000. A client of Ian Gould at DPP Law, a man known as Robert, was stopped by police at a junction before being beaten with, and this is a quote from Ian Gould's own article on his blog, no less than 3 overarm blows with his baton to Robert's shin. The first 2 strikes were delivered whilst Robert was being held effectively immobile by two of the officer's colleagues, and the third and most gratuitous blow fell whilst Robert was already lying on the ground howling in agony from the result of the first 2 so-called distraction strikes. Now, I'll link to the blog in the description, of course, but to summarise, Robert was waiting at a junction when a police car screeched up with blues and twos. He was shouted at to get out of his car without any explanation as to why. Without Robert being given the chance to react, the police started trying to smash through his window, which of course is going to cause some confusion to the occupant. Robert let up off the brake and moved his car slightly before coming to a complete stop. He was soon surrounded by more police cars before his window was smashed and he was sprayed with Parva spray. The police attempted to drag Robert from his car while Robert held on to his steering wheel. The police managed to get Robert some way out of the car door before Mustoe started to hit him with his baton. There is footage of this on the blog post linked to in the description if you want to go and check that out. Now, you would think that with all the police and the force used, Robert would have been wanted for something serious. But in fact, it turns out that all Robert was guilty of was a failure to report a change in his financial circumstances to the DWP. And unbeknownst to Robert, a warrant was issued for his arrest. Now think about that for a moment. Those of you who are or have received any support, you know that sometimes things slip your mind, but imagine if the police were to act like this in a similar instance of you forgetting to inform them of a change of circumstances. Doesn't this show the mentality of some police constables who are clearly not mentally fit to be serving in a role of such power? Now, although Mustoe got away with causing the disability to Robert, the force did pay out, but it's satisfying to know that the cretinous bastard has been caught out and is now serving time, albeit for a different offence. But let's just hope that he is in a general population and not safely tucked away in a pedo wing. In fact, he probably will be put in a pedo wing for protection, where he will no doubt be sharing stories with the other sick fuckos for the next 2 years. Now, and just for some fun, and if you don't like feet, I suggest you look away, unless you like tattoos, in which case you're in for a dilemma, as this involves feet and tattoos. I had a WhatsApp message the other day with some photos attached, but rather than explain what I think, I'm just going to read you the message and show you the images. Now, I'm sorry, but you didn't leave your name in the message, so I can't say who you are, but thank you for the message. I thought it was brilliant. Hi, mate. I've been a sub for a while. I've been subject to a pretty horrific investigation now spanning nearly 2 years. Charges are money laundering, extortion, fraud, obstruction of police justice. The investigating officer is a corrupt officer who has lied throughout. I'm subject to a restraint order freezing all assets, house, bank accounts, etc. Hoping my court case arrives soon so I can clear my name. You and others have helped me through with your content. Here's something I thought you and your followers may enjoy. A tattoo of the officer investigating my case. It's her collar number and a police helmet so I can walk on her like a piece of shit on my shoe all day long. Much loved, and carry on your good work. Big thank you to channel supporters one and all, especially the channel Patreon supporters. Your support is truly appreciated. And that's all I have for you today. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, please stay safe, look after each other, film the police and other officials.
Good night, all.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.